All Hydra Dominatus, welcome to the Alpharius review. It is time to talk about the strangest Primarch in terms of morality, the most incomprehensible Primarch in terms of back in the history of the universe, and the boldest Primarch in terms of his legion. This is a very unusual character, in the case of which even his figure can raise questions, because he can look like this, or even like this. Perhaps he has been standing on my shelf for a long time even before it was announced. However, the box is standard for Primarchs. Inside, in addition to the figure, there's a stand, 4 simple replaceable hands, a melee weapon and a ranged weapon. My first impression of him was very pleasant. Whether he is really as good as he looks, we'll see now. Let's start analyzing the visual. Obviously, Alpharius has unique armor, but the lower part of the boots is similar to Magda's boots. It is nice to see a minimum of decorations and emblems on the shins, although the Skelly armor itself looks impressive and unusual comparing to everything that was before. There are metal inserts, quite nice looking. At the backside, under the cape, by the way, there's well-designed plates. On one hand, there's also reference to scales, on the other to Mark III and Cataphractii armor. It is interesting that the sole of the boots has 2 colors, metallic and blue. I haven't seen that before. On the belt there is a bandage with a green chain with 2 Hydra heads. Removing it, we can see that on the right knee there is a Roman numeral 20. This is a legion number. The hips also have scaly armor. On the belt itself there's one of the emblems of the Alpha Legion, the letters Alpha and Omega. On the left hands a holster for a pistol. On the right there's a holder for 2 grenades, and I would like to stop for a second here, because there were questions about the green color. Everyone paints miniatures differently, and the arts are drawn differently. I even saw a variant with grey grenades, or even the effect that they're made of glass and there's a liquid or gas inside. They are called the Venom Spheres. These are frag grenades, which contain toxin-impregnated crystalline splinters toxins based on xenotechnology. In this case, they have such a metallic green color. I think this is the right choice, but in general we will return to this color. The Primarch has a regular plate on the back. The stomach and chest armor consist of overlapping layers, where on the chest there are again scale plates, a collar and 2 cables coming from under the shoulder pads. By the way, while we are looking at them directly, I do not really like how these circles peeking out from under them are painted green. On the right arm, almost typical for Terminator Cataphractii armor, there's a 2-tiered shoulder pad with straps covering the shoulder, a massive elbow pad. The forearm is made in the same way as the shins, and a rather simple fist and a glove. A green chain is tied right on the elbow band. At the top of the shoulder pad there's a decoration in the form of a snake woven into it. The left arm repeats the right, except that the shoulder pad has lost his straps in the front and the back for some reason. A strange design decision from GW which I cannot explain. Under the cape on the back the inner part of the armor are visible. The cape itself is white and doesn't stand out in any way, except for a small picture on the bottom. The power backpack, although it has very interesting decoration in the form of Hydra heads and engines, is actually an enlarged version of the backpack from Mark III armor. And as far as I understand, the same backpacks are worn, for example, by the figures of Rogal Dorn or Lemon Russ. By the way, the backpack is removable, unlike the cloak. Under it there is such an unusual fastening, but I can't show it personally, because mine is glued with dried paint. I'm afraid to damage something trying to remove it. The helmet of Alpharius, like the culture of his legion, has an ancient Greek style. Mostly I mean his mohawk and the vertical line in the middle. It is also decorated with a metallic pattern. On the right there is an additional device with an antenna, probably a tool for right tapping, vox communication and night vision or something similar. There is also a redstone in the center of the helmet, and the lenses are made in green. Alpharius' spear is assembled from 2 parts and is called Cerisonata or Pale Spear. All of the Alpharius weapons are made on the basis of xenotechnologies, and the spear is no exception. Its origin is unknown, but it is an ancient artifact with an unusual action for Warhammer, because during battle it shimmers, makes a terrible hole and breaks through any obstacle, leaving bloodless wounds, simply dissolving flesh. Many viewers didn't like how the green areas are painted. It looks flat, cheap and unnatural. I partly agree with this, it really would not hurt to add shadows or at least more shine to the shaft. A huge double-barreled, master-crafted plasma blaster called the Angel of the Hydra. And of course it differs from the other plasma weapons, in that it does not have disadvantages such as overheating and low rate of fire. It is also made using xenotechnology, painted a little better than spear. At least there are more than 2 colors, but it is still flat and the seam in the front does not look aesthetically pleasing. The set includes 4 interchangeable heads, nothing interesting, a pair for a spear, a pair for a pistol, clenched fists are installed by default. I changed the right one to a spear grip, the left one to a pistol grip. It is optimal because the hand for a blaster can also be used for a spear, to make a double grip, so this seems to be the best configuration. The articulation of the Primarch is not quite standard, it is more reminiscent of the articulation of the Cataphractii, which in general is excellent mobility, in which he is not really inferior to other Primarchs, but he also has a couple of features. For example, in the knees there is a single band, and not double like everyone else. The joint inside looks like the double one, but the knee does not bend more than 90 degrees anyway. The arms, thanks to the shape of the shoulder pads, can be greatly moved to the sides, but the chains around the elbows seem a little uncomfortable, and the shoulder pads scrubbing the backpack during rotation. Like all the Primarchs and all the Cataphracti, shoulder pads are connected with the ball joints. In the chest and belt areas there are also ball joints, but the mobility is very tight. I didn't find any articulated parts on the backpack. The head moves really nice and softly. You can turn it as you like, tilt and race. Alpharius is the most mysterious character in Warhammer, and everything that is known about him may be a fake. It is not even completely clear whether he died or still alive. What was his homeworld if it wasn't Terra? If there any confirmation of the existence of his brother Omegon, who appeared after the warp split, and if Alpharius is called Alpharius Omegon, then Omegon is called Omegon Omegon, or Omegon Alpharius. More specifics are known about his armor, called the Pythian Scales. Of course, this is a very powerful armor that can protect against any type of weapon. The wiki says that the armor is really massive, and when the Primarch put it on, he stood out noticeably, and it was immediately clear to everyone that he's in the mood for a serious battle. At the same time, Alpharius was a Psyker, and could change his shape and size like the Emperor, putting on ordinary Space Marine armor and pretending to be ordinary people, which is why you don't need an Alpharius figure if you want him, but there is no opportunity to buy one. You can take absolutely any other figure and say that this is Alpharius. No one will be able to dispute this statement. But if we talk about the armor, then even the cloak of this monster of the Stealth Force is unique. It is a Camelioline cloak. It consists of the substance called Camelioline, such an original name, which refracts light and helps to disguise very effectively. Now about the figure. First of all, the most important thing is the color. His painting, except for some green moments, is wonderful. The main color looks great, beautiful and serious. It shines just a little, but the shine only decorates it, especially in combination with the relief of the scales. In the wargame Warhammer, this color has a cool specific name, but in general it is very similar to blue indigo. The figure is massive and stable, a little more stable in posing than for example Guilliman, although it weighs about the same, 392 grams with weapons. He can make a cover pose with a two-handed grip of the spear to finish off the enemy. Running and walking are also available, but the guy is massive, even heavy, and therefore I wouldn't say that he is super flexible and can do cool dynamics. It is not for nothing that his armor on the shoulders and legs resembles that of the Terminator, although this doesn't in any way diminish his monstrous spectacular and luxurious visual. It is time for comparisons. Ordinary people like Sisters of Battle are as tall as Primarch's leg. All generation Space Marines can reach the waist level, accordingly as well as simple heroes' soldiers. By the way, the Sons of Horus are quite interestingly matched with Alpha Legionaries by color. The old Terminator, the new Terminator, and the giant Ahriman. It is unlikely that Alpharius could get lost among his Latnians in this armor, but Abaddon is wider than Alpharius, and next to him, in a half squat, the figure can easily be placed. Both in 1/12 scale, far from the largest canister bionicle to make Alpharius a little more modest. Guilliman, like an old 40k figure, has broader shoulders and more powerful arms, a waist almost twice as narrow, smaller legs and of course shorter stature. While they are facing the camera, the difference in height may not be noticeable, but in the profile we see that their shoulders are set at different levels. The neck area is also higher for Alpharius. The question is whether it should be like this and whether Guilliman's scale has suffered. After all, this is an old 40k figure. Initially it seemed to me that this is wrong, and Alpharius should be significantly shorter, being the height of the Space Marine Terminator. But the Warhammer Wiki says two things that changed my point of view. Firstly, that his armor is massive compared to the Space Marines, which probably wouldn't have been mentioned if he was the size of a Cataphracti. And secondly, that Alpharius is a Psyker who could change his visual appearance almost to that of an ordinary person. Compared to Sanguinius, he's also pretty big. These guys should be in the same correct scale. Only here the angle is bad, Sanguinius stands a little behind Alpharius because of his wings. In fact, their height difference is no more than a centimeter, the same as for Guilliman. Well, and of course, next to this man, no matter how big and tall he is, and no matter how powerful Psyker he is, Alpharius has no chance. Let's sum it up. Again, unfortunately I don't have a Dorn figure, and the Heresy Guilliman wasn't even announced. And I cannot remember any more famous fights with Alpharius, so in my case he can only saw through a couple of Imperial fists. The Alpharius figure, unlike his other brothers, is notable for being the first Heresy Primarch to come out after Joytoy switched to a new scale, a new assembly type, and new figure's bodies and proportions. He is big compared to the standard old Primarchs, and in this regard it would be interesting to compare him with someone in the future. But it's obvious that Perturabo will be next, and after him probably Vulcan. Both of these guys will be far from the concept of an average Primarch, so we'll definitely have to wait until the next year and the release of Fulgrim or Mortarion. However, the figure can still be combined with brothers from 40k waves. and its main advantages are the beautiful relief of the armor and its coloring. Together they create a very pleasant visual. But I cannot say that this figure is more interesting than Magnus, Guilliman or Sanguinius. Alpharius is nice and he holds the level of the Joytoy Primarchs, but it seems to me that he doesn't have some kind of feature, and in many ways this figure is similar to the figure of Dorn, only with even more modest set of accessories. This is where the review comes to an end. I want to remind you that if you like the video, your likes, subscriptions and feedback in the comments will be very appreciated. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.